Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging. Apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Thank you for joining me today. We've got a lot to talk about in the next couple of hours. I hope you'll be able to join us through the entire time. Might just mention in passing that we are going to be involved in our Truth Team Week. Matter of fact, in just a few minutes, we're going to be talking with our good friend Gary Bauer, and we'll be talking about some of the things that he's been writing about in terms of everything from American greatness to what is happening in Israel, some of the response to the Mueller report, and much more. To me, one of those stories that deserved a lot more attention, but we always like to give it attention when no one else does, is you might remember that we've done a couple of interviews on this pro-life film called Unplanned, and the estimates were that it probably wouldn't do that well for a variety of reasons. There were various institutions, various outlets that decided not to carry the ads for it. That really hurt you. Of course, you had anybody that was part of the abortion movement saying that this is inaccurate or it's unfair or whatever it was. So most people suggested that this particular film by Pure Flix might earn around $3 million. And, of course, it doubled that and surprised everyone, given the fact that it was controversial, given the fact that even here on Point of View, although we did do some interviews about it, and I did some commentaries about it, we haven't pushed it as much as we pushed a couple of other films simply because of just the way it sort of played out in terms of some of the publicity. But nevertheless, that is one of those success stories that I think is going to suggest that the movie Unplanned is going to be around for some time. And I might just mention that there were some other things working against it, not the least of which is that a number of even pro-life people went to the film and said, whoa, there's a couple scenes in there that are pretty strong. Well, when you're talking about abortion, I think by definition, of course, that's going to fit that category. So I thought it was kind of interesting to see how that played out as well. And so even with all of that working against it, they doubled the reasonable estimate for how well it would do. And I think that's good news for those of us that are pro-life and for those who want to get the information out about Planned Parenthood. Like I said, in just a few minutes, we've got Gary Bauer with us, but I thought I'd come back to an issue real quickly that we mentioned on Friday. I quoted from a piece by Peggy Noonan, and the reason I did was because she was concerned about the fierce, if you will, back and forth between Americas, what she calls the two Americas have grown much fiercer. And she says one of the things that you probably need to write about every once in a while is when indeed this back and forth has become so significant. And she, of course, uses the Mueller report and then decides to go back, 43 years to 1973 and talks about 46 years, I guess I should say, go back to 1973, in which she was talking about a piece that was written in Time magazine back then, talking about the two different worlds that we find ourselves in, interestingly enough. And as a result, use that to talk about the fact that if there was some kind of division between America in 1972 and 1973 with the impending re-election of Richard Nixon over George McGovern, there's something else going on, and that is even then there was an ability for the nation to come together and oftentimes to heal itself. The reality is that is not taking place today. And so that brings us to one of the pieces that surfaced just the other day in which Arthur Brooks, who's been on the program with us before, actually has written about the fact that we have a problem not just with incivility or intolerance, but he says really what you have is contempt. I took the time then to get a copy of his book. We'll probably spend some time talking about that maybe on Wednesday with Nick Pitts because it's talking about love your enemies. And in there, he really documents the rise of contempt in America. And even in the piece that I wrote about just a few weeks ago on the culture of contempt, in which he was quoting from the proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, it really just shows how divided we are. So divided that some people are even talking about the fact that the division between the average Republican and the average Democrat is like the division between Palestinians and Israelis. So my commentary for tomorrow is entitled Partisan Hate, and that one is based upon another New York Times op-ed, this one in this particular case by Thomas Edsall, in which he's writing about a couple of other different papers, one in particular called Lethal Mass Partisanship, in which he found that a very high percentage of individuals in both political parties believe that the other side is downright evil. So it's interesting that whether it's an individual like Arthur Brooks, who would identify himself as sort of center-right, or Thomas Edsall, who I would identify himself as maybe left of center, probably, if we were real honest, very progressive, nevertheless kind of saying the same thing. And the other part of that Thomas Edsall points out is he quotes from another academic study, which I don't talk about in the commentary other than just to cite the study itself to find that actually what is happening is that the best informed voters are the most partisan. And so David French, who's been on the program with us before, writing in the National Review, makes this really significant comment. He says, in a time of crisis, American citizens often look for guidance and take their cues from the subset of American citizens who are most engaged and informed. Yet study after study is now showing that this cohort of Americans is driving the engine of American division. So whereas before we would hope that maybe the better educated, the more informed, would say, no, wait a minute, some of this is a conspiracy theory, some of this is just kind of craziness, need to come back, get some sanity, take a deep breath. It's not as bad as you're saying it is. And actually what is happening is those individuals who are in positions of leadership are actually making some of the most outrageous statements and actually leading the charge and stirring the pot. And so whereas there was a hope to, in one way or another, find somebody that might eventually get us out of this quandary, there's every reason to believe that the most educated, the most informed, the most politically involved are the ones maybe driving some of this. And so it all the more brings us back to a need for levels of civility, to really speak out against contemptuous statements being made and trying to be as gracious as possible. So I did want to mention that because my commentary tomorrow is on that subject. My commentary today is actually on the story of Chick-fil-A, which we've talked about quite often here, so I won't rehearse that any further than that, but just simply to give you some of the facts and figures on it. And the theme that we're talking about this week is socialism, a clear and present danger. So we're going to have a chance to talk with Gary Bauer in just a few minutes. Later, Dinesh D'Souza, and most importantly, Debbie D'Souza, his wife, who's actually from Venezuela, has done a very good piece that appeared in Prager Video, and that has to do with socialism in Venezuela. And then in studio with us, we will also have Col Allen West on the third hour, and I think he will certainly have some comments about that as well. So there's just a lot of things we're going to cover in the next couple of hours. It's part of our Truth Team. We'll get into more of the details related to that in just a few minutes, but let's, if we can, take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk with our good friend, Gary Bauer. All that coming up right after this.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
Here we go again. This time, the San Antonio City Council banned Chick-fil-A from serving food at the San Antonio airport. If this sounds familiar, the same thing happened about 4 years ago at the Denver airport. Taking a stand for traditional marriage can get you banned by progressive council members. That was the issue in Denver. But the ban in San Antonio added another twist. The council members also took issue with the fact that Chick-fil-A gives contributions to the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, which has a statement of faith based on a biblical perspective about human sexuality. As I explained back in 2015, the Denver City Council backed down because Denver attorneys warned that barring a business on the basis of political prejudice could result in a First Amendment lawsuit they would most likely lose. We'll have to see what happens in the next few weeks in San Antonio. The ironies here are significant. One councilman said everyone has a place here and everyone should feel welcome when they walk through our airport. But it doesn't seem like Chick-fil-A or other similar businesses are welcome. A representative of the company said this is the first they heard about this when they read the press release from the councilman. The representative reminded him and anyone else that everyone is and should feel welcome at Chick-fil-A. We have a fundamental code of conduct at Chick-fil-A. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. They serve more than 140,000 people on a daily basis without regard to race, gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, or gender identity. A bill in the Texas legislature is being debated that would ensure that the government cannot punish religious groups, businesses, counselors, wedding vendors, or others for their sincerely held religious beliefs. That is one remedy to blatant viewpoint discrimination. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
For a free copy of Kerby's booklet, A Biblical View on Socialism, go to viewpoints.info/socialism. That's viewpoints.info/socialism. Point of View, Truth Team 360.
Hi, this is June Hunt from Hope for the Heart. Kerby and his guests are biblically based, and they bring a conservative voice to today's issues. I want to encourage you to honor this ministry with a special financial gift. You can do that at pointofview.net. That's pointofview.net. And Kerby, I thank God for your ministry. You are needed in our world, because truth is needed in our hearts.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
Again, this week we're going to spend some time talking about this idea of socialism, a clear and present danger. But first, we want to spend some time with our good friend Gary Bauer, and I'm going to be quoting quite a bit from his end-of-day report, both Thursday and Friday. One of the things we always do is encourage you to sign up for that, and I was just even this morning talking to someone who says I make a point of trying to read it every single day. So again, we have a link to AmericanValues.org. It's ouramericanvalues.org. You don't even have to remember all that, because if you just click on where his picture is, you will find that. And again, it's one of those must-reads. Gary Bauer, of course, served in the Ronald Reagan administration first as Undersecretary of Education, which I want to get back to in just a minute when we talk about the denying of American greatness. But he also, of course, was the Chief Domestic Policy Advisor, and, of course, now is the President of American Values. Gary, thank you so very much for joining us once again here on Point of View.
Hey, Kerby, it's always a pleasure. You're doing such a great job, and every time I'm getting worn down in the Washington wars, I look at my schedule, and if I see I'm going to be doing Point of View, I suddenly get a new charge of energy to keep in the fight.
Well, I was just thinking last week, probably energized you in a number of different ways. Matter of fact, I think he was even quoting Jim Garrett. He says, "Are we tired of winning yet?" Because it was just like every single thing which was happening was positive. Of course, the Mueller report, and of course, even the idea that the Defense Department has figured out a way we can fund this a barrier in this wall and a number of other things. And we can go through all of those. But that kind of brings me to your Thursday edition of the End of Day Report, because you point out, and I would wholeheartedly agree, that the border is at a breaking point. We, I think, have a very clear reason why we need to have people at the border, why Customs and Border Protection should exist, why we shouldn't abolish ICE, which some of our Democratic friends think we should do, and why we need to build a wall. What would you think?
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, I don't know what's worse, the crisis at the border or the crisis in American journalism. The failure of the American media is just to do normal journalistic work and report the facts to the American people about what's going on is breathtaking. But, put that aside for a second. In spite of everything that Donald Trump has tried to do, and on this issue of the border and securing it, I think he has spent more time on that than virtually anything. At every step, the left blocks him. It's either the left in Congress that refuses to negotiate at all about just reasonable, normal border security, or if it's the left-wing judges that were appointed by the previous president and continue to exact their revenge by striking down many of the things the president has done that I believe are well within his authority. And then, as I said, you've got this media problem of not reporting the facts. And then you've got what appears to be almost every major contender for the Democrat presidential nomination for 2020 either repeating this mantra that there is no border crisis or suggesting that it's perfectly okay for hundreds of thousands, up to 1.5 million by some projections, so-called migrants crossing the border into the United States over the next year.
Well, and again, let's use your numbers, because this is one of the reasons why people probably want to get the end-of-day report, in which we are setting record after record for the number crossing our borders. And at the rate we're going, as you mentioned, just in passing, let's get into that, 1.5 million illegal immigrants will enter the United States this year. That means more people will come in illegally than come in legally. And the bottom line is we don't know what happens to them because they've so overwhelmed border security that it is pretty much catch and release. And even my wife the other day was saying, really, is that the case? And I said, yeah, catch and release maybe works well for fly fishing, but we just say we don't have the ability to process you, so we'll just let you into the general public and you can come back for a hearing, and we know how many of them come back. And so we are having a crisis that, as you said, is completely ignored by the mainstream media and by a number of individuals that would like to replace Donald Trump in the Oval Office.
Yeah, no question about it. Kerby, I think your wife represents a lot of people. Unless you're immersed in immigration law, people often will not understand exactly what's going on. And if they can't count on the media to give them the real facts, the bottom line is that under the current law, if you step 1 foot into the United States and say, I want to claim asylum, I'm trying to escape persecution or danger or whatever the thing that the migrant says, under current immigration law, we are required to allow that person to have their day in court before an immigration judge to see if they've actually got a case for claiming asylum. By the way, saying when you cross the border, I can't make the kind of money I want to make in Honduras or Guatemala, so I've come to the United States to make more money. That may be something you sympathize with. That is not a criteria for somebody to be accepted as a migrant into the United States. It has to be actual persecution. So they're assigned this right to have an immigration judge. The law also says they cannot be expelled from the country while they're waiting for that hearing to take place. So we give them a trial date. In many cases, we give them an electronic monitor that is put on their ankle. The great majority of the migrants that have that monitoring device put on their ankle cut it off, the device, within 48 hours. And the overwhelming majority of them that are released in the United States never show up for the asylum hearing. This could be solved very easily. If the Republicans who want to do this could find a willing partners in the Democrat Party, the Democrats could say, hey, look, we're all for letting people in, but you got to follow the law, and we're going to do this. The problem would be solved overnight. Instead, we're seeing the exact opposite. They won't make that reform, and at the same time, the left is promising migrants all over the world, get into America, you're going to get free this, free that, free everything. In other words, not only are the left not helping to solve the problem, they are increasing the magnetic pool of every hurting person in the world to head to the United States.
Well, again, we're talking with Gary Bauer, and served, of course, as the Chief Domestic Policy Advisor under Ronald Reagan. And just before we go to a break, I was just thinking, you were talking about that kind of that list of things. I remember when Ronald Reagan ran against Walter Mondale, who would not probably agree with half the list I'm going to mention here. You still ended up beating him in 49 out of 50 states. But the current Democratic leadership are talking about Medicare for all, a Green New Deal, abortion right up to birth, free college tuition, guaranteed basic income, a living wage of $15 an hour, government daycare, abolish ICE, which you just mentioned a minute ago, immigration and customs enforcement, eliminate private health insurance, end the electoral college, voting age to 16, end the filibuster, pack the Supreme Court, and reparations. That's a short list. And I think if I had told you back in 1984 when you were working with Ronald Reagan that there would be a Democratic candidate actually advocating most of those procedures, I think you would have thought that I completely lost my mind. But that's exactly what's happening right now, isn't it?
It is, Kerby, and I would never accuse you of losing your mind no matter what you said. But no, you're right. I mean, it is a radical agenda. The media will often say that the Republicans have become so radical. The Republican positions on these things hasn't changed in 30, 35 years. The radicalization in American politics has occurred in the Democrat Party, and that's why you're seeing sort of a brewing civil war within the Democrat Party as some Democrats begin to push back. Some common sense Democrats begin to push back. But these are positions that the progressive wing of that party, which is on the ascendancy, has staked out. And it's hard to believe that with those positions, the polling shows there's a 38, 39, 40% of the public that's all in with them, which makes this a deeply divided country over fundamental questions.
And we were just talking about that before we got you on. And when we come back, I want to talk about the solution, because I think one solution is programs like Point of View. But as an individual that was the Undersecretary of Education for a while, you understand why you've had the former Attorney General, Eric Holder, say, when was America ever great? And I want to get into that piece and then even share some of the things I've learned since I've read your piece. So we've got that coming up. If you would like to join us, especially to support this ministry, it's all available at our website. We'll be right back.
Last week, the Senate held a vote on the Green New Deal. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York,
I'm the boss,
that young darling of leftists and dancing communists everywhere, believes a special class of people in Washington, D.C. can run our lives and everything else better than we can.
I'm the boss.
It's a clear and present danger to our prosperity and our very survival. Such ideas have failed everywhere they've been tried throughout history. But there's always someone who thinks the problem is not the bad ideas, but the fact that they weren't running the show.
I'm the boss.
On top of that, whenever these ideas grow, there's no room for God or God's people. America's ignorance of socialism needs to be confronted. That's why America needs you on the Truth Team. When you join now, you protect our nation's future, and you get double the impact thanks to a generous matching gift. Joining is fast and easy online at pointofview.net or by phone 800-347-5151. Pointofview.net, and 800-347-5151.
Point of View will continue after this. You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Continue our conversation with Gary Bauer. Of course, he is the president of American Values, and we have all sorts of great information about him, including his end-of-day report. And Gary, the first time I think I began to be aware of you is I remember testimony where you and Bill Bennett at the time was Secretary of Education. You were, I believe, the Undersecretary of Education. Yeah. We're talking about these textbooks And I remember watching that, reading about that, using it in a newspaper column I wrote. Of course, then very quickly thereafter, we got to hear about Gary Bauer all the time. And I thought about that the other day when I was reading the Friday end-of-day report, in which the former Attorney General Eric Holder was asked on MSNBC, of course, you know where this is going to go, about Make America Great Again. And he responded with, well, exactly when do you think America was great? And, of course, the implication was that America has never been great in the past. And I was thinking a lot of that has to do with the way we teach about American history in the classroom, don't you think?
It really does, Kerby. And this may be the most dangerous thing happening in America of all the problems that we're concerned about and are trying to address. All the way back, as you mentioned, when I was Undersecretary of Education and Bill Bennett was Secretary of Education, we started looking at American history textbooks, and we were mortified to find that we're right in the middle of the Cold War with the Soviet Union, and a lot of those textbooks took the approach of being neutral in that Cold War. On the one hand, the textbook would say America believes this. On the other hand, the Soviet Union argues such and such. And so Bennett and I criticized those textbooks and said, this is outrageous that textbooks being used in a free nation are failing to teach our young people the case for America against godless communism. Well, what broke out on Capitol Hill. Some of the liberals in Congress then were very upset at us, and there was a controversy about it and so forth. I wish I could say that at the end of that controversy, a light bulb went on, and we started doing a better job educating our children for freedom. But unfortunately, we haven't. In fact, if anything, the textbooks are worse. Kids are not being taught about American greatness. They're not being taught that America's founding was anything, in many cases, anything other than evil. All the problems America has or has had in the past are what's emphasized. And the result of this is you got we have a generation now that is the least patriotic generation in the history of polling. And then you have politicians like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who know virtually nothing about American history, quite frankly, because nobody has ever taught it to them.
Well, and again, the reaction to Eric Holder was just kind of interesting. Vice President Mike Pence, who you and I know, responded by posting 4 pictures, and the pictures are of Washington crossing the Delaware River, Americans raising the American flag over Iwo Jima, Buzz Aldrin posing with the American flag on the moon, and Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. giving, of course, his famous speech in Washington. And in a commentary I've got coming out, I said, now you might have think that would have ended the discussion, but I said, just consider the Twitter responses. And here's one of them. When Washington crossed the Delaware, there was slavery. When the flag was raised at Iwo Jima, Japanese Americans were in internment camps. When King marched on Washington, black people could not vote. And when we landed on the moon, millions were dying in Vietnam. A good example of, from a leftist perspective, no matter how much good is done in this country, it is never enough. Isn't that amazing?
It is amazing, and you're absolutely correct in your analysis of that. Look, what they're doing is comparing America in each of these time periods to some country that doesn't exist, to some make-believe utopia somewhere that has everything figured out and always did from the very beginning this utopia began until today. The fact of the matter is, to determine if our country is great, you don't compare it to utopia. You compare it to other countries in the world. And the fact of the matter is, in any of those time periods, whether it was at our founding, when we liberated the world from Nazism and the Japanese warlords, when we landed on the moon, or when Martin Luther King was making the case for the dignity and worth and value of all Americans, including men and women of color, in all of those periods of time, we would still compare favorably to any other country in the world. Our country, our system of government, our economic system has provided more opportunity and more chances for progress to more people than any system in the history of the world. And yet the one area where it's clear we have failed is in our educational establishment, where we are teaching our children that this is a country, quite frankly, to be despised rather than honored.
You know, when it's interesting when you look at some of those Twitter feeds, and again, you and I, we must be masochists because we read some of these liberal tweets and we go to some of these liberal blogs and everything. But every once in a while, I like to kind of poke their chest a little bit and say, okay, well, if indeed that's the case, let's just kind of think about the political affiliation of those individuals. It was Democrat Franklin Delano Roosevelt that put Japanese Americans in internment camps. It was Southern Democrats who kept African Americans from voting. And it was Democrat Lyndon Johnson who expanded the Vietnam War. So that means you must support Donald Trump. Of course, that's not where, but you just have to have some fun with this because otherwise you just shake your head. And it brings us back to kind of the theme this week that we're talking about socialism, clear and present danger. We're going to be talking with Dinesh D'Souza. A little later in the week, we're going to be talking with Jay Richards, who just did a debate with a socialist at Notre Dame. And you're right. There is this tendency to compare the free enterprise system with utopia. But even when we get Dinesh D'Souza's wife on, Debbie D'Souza, she was born in Caracas, Venezuela. She can talk about what socialism looks like in Venezuela. And it seems to me that whether we can turn the classroom around, I don't know. But through radio programs, through the kind of movies that Dinesh D'Souza does, kind of the commentaries that you write, we've got to begin to educate the next generation that thinks that socialism is better than capitalism.
No question about it, Kerby. And I think even if I may say so, you're too modest about your role in all of this and point of view. You just said that you need things like point of view. Well, you do, but I would argue even more than that. That from when I look at my own experience on point of view and the work I've had the pleasure of doing with you over the decades now. I'm sorry to say we're getting older, Kerby.
Yes.
You have been and continue to be, and point of view continues to be one of the most accurate, effective, influential sources of information that Americans just are not going to get from mainstream media and the popular culture. So may you be on the air for another 50 years. It's really important, the work that you do. I know for me it's been an outlet when I was often getting shut out from other media sources, and I believe none of us will know, Kerby, including you, how much influence that you've had and continue to have, and I believe will have for many years through Point of View.
Well, and again, as you said, we are getting older, and some people say, well, what's the future? Well, for example, on Wednesday, we have a Millennial Roundtable, and Dr. Nick Pitts is on with us, and maybe I should get you two on together. Those are two very bright individuals that, because we recognize that this was started in 1972 by Marlon Maddox. Of course, I started at least appearing on the program in 1980 after going to Georgetown for a second master's degree. By 1986, I was first a guest host, then a co-host, and now the host. And so this has continued on. And in the old days, you as well as I know that sometimes this was the only way to kind of break up that secular filibuster being held by the mainstream media. Today, it's a little different. There's a lot of sources of information, but not all of it's accurate. So a lot of people come here for some of that accuracy. So just before we go, I wanted to let you go in just a second, but I wanted to, again, encourage people to also get another very good resource, and that is the End of Day Report. You can go to ouramericanvalues.org. There's a place where you can sign up. And we talked about the Friday issue on American greatness, and if nothing else, we really just need to educate the next generation, don't we?
We sure do, Kerby. And let me add my voice to your listeners here. You can't find a better place, folks, to make an investment, to provide a gift, a tax-deductible gift to Point of View and to Kerby Anderson and the work that you're doing, Kerby. You're right. We've been doing this for a while, but I've never seen such an effort as there is right now to silence people like us, which is all the more reason that good people around the country that want this alternative source of the real news and a way to counter the left-wing arguments to make sure that Point of View and the work you're doing, Kerby, is able to continue for many, many years in the future.
Well, Gary, always great to have you on the program. Look forward to the next opportunity. So thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely. Great to be with you.
Going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to bring in Brad Fisk to talk about this Truth Team Week and get you ready for another 2 hours of great material, all coming up right after this.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
My name is Kwasi Agbota. I heard this for the first time driving through Alabama 5 minutes ago as I'm returning to Detroit. I was very touched. It stands out as timeless in its approach. I greatly appreciated that. I was moved by it, and so I called to give my testimony. And I was very curious about a lot of the same issues and timeless truth and contemporary application. So I thank God for what you all are doing, and I want to encourage you all that you are reaching perhaps a much broader audience than you might believe. God bless you.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
Kind of an unexpected call, and we certainly appreciate that. Just to illustrate again, just the kind of people that we're reaching, in this case, driving through on his way to Detroit. So I thought you would appreciate hearing that. And as I mentioned, as we started the program today, that we're in the midst of our Truth Team Week, and I thought we'd bring Brad Fisk in, who has always joined us every single time for that. And again, as you support this ministry, you're supporting some of the things Gary Bauer had to say just a minute ago.
You are indeed. And if you don't think there's a culture war war going on around us, then I'm not sure what underground shelter you're living in. But, Kerby, it's to the point where you can't believe this stuff.
Yes.
And I hear things being challenged that I grew up as a kid. I remember learning about the Electoral College and how that worked.
Yeah.
And the importance of it and why, if we didn't have it, what could happen.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, it's a serious discussion on the table. That's just one example of the insanity and the culture wars that are going on. But we're not going to sit here and wring our hands for all week.
No, we got
That's
solutions.
Not what we're doing.
Yeah.
Because we have an ultimate solution in the Word of God. And we can always go back to that as the anchor as to, okay, if not this, then what? And I think that having the Word of God firmly attached to us and us to it will make a huge difference for eternity and a huge difference in our cultural war.
And one of the things we say all the time is that we really do talk about a wide variety of issues, which is one of the reasons why I enjoy having Gary Bauer on, because we didn't even get to some of the things I wanted to talk to him about, Israel and the Golan Heights, and we only just mentioned in passing the Mueller investigation, all sorts of other topics. So when you support this ministry, you're supporting not only the kinds of things that we do on air 3 hours a day, but you're also supporting the information, the news, the videos, all sorts of other resources, and just to having a chance to hear in just a few minutes, we're going to hear from Dinesh and Debbie D'Souza. We're going to hear from Col Allen West, just heard a minute ago from Gary Bauer. So as we come to the top of the hour, let me just encourage some of you to go to our website, and you'll see this banner. It says Socialism, Clear and Present Danger. Join the team now. And we have suggested that if you could join us at a level of $1 a day, $30 a month, we would greatly appreciate that. We have a list of just a few of the ideas being held by some of these presidential candidates, which I asked Gary Bauer, even back in 1984 when Walter Mondale was running against Ronald Reagan and lost 49 states, even Walter Mondale was not talking about some of this. Right. Even George McGovern in 1972 was not. But again, as you go to the website there for $1 a day, $30 a month, you can join with us. But we also have the Liberty Club, which is $50 per month, and then the Century Club, which is $100 a month. And Brad, as we've pointed out before, I know people don't give to get, but we have some thank you gifts for each level, don't we?
We do indeed. And frankly, just the issues alone ought to be motivation. Forget the thank you gifts in a way, although we love giving them, because it is so important that we step in and be heard. But the Century Club, I'll tell you a little bit, we're kind of modified that a little bit this year. We really believe that there needs to be an outpouring this week of $100 a month givers. And there's a lot of people that can do that. And what we want to do is kind of make it extra special this year, because we have made a deal with Faith Comes by Hearing, who produces the military Bible stick. And we're talking about Bible sticks that we give to people like as a thank you gift for $1 a day. This is different. It's a military version that is made to military specifications. Literally went through an approval process by the U.S. military to be able to give out to the soldiers. And we don't just mass distribute them. They are asked for by the soldiers to the chaplains, and the chaplain gives them one. Military Bible stick. You got it in your hand.
Yeah, I'm going to show it here. Let's just, if we can, have the camera come to me for just a minute. There's the package, and that's what it looks like. And again, the advantage is that at the $100 a month level, not only do you receive the Outlook magazine and the booklets that we've been talking about for really now more than a year, but you also not only have those that you but these will be sent to 2 different families.
That's right.
And then there's actually a CD in here as well. I guess I should pull
it's
it all out.
It's an MP3 disc.
Yeah, there we go. So there you have all. Then that will go to the family. So this is just an incredible opportunity.
Isn't
Talk
it?
about that.
So here it is. We have servicemen and women who are serving us overseas, and it's very lonely. It's a very difficult time. Those who have served know exactly what I'm talking about. And this is an opportunity to embed yourself in the Word of God day by day out in the battlefield. This is a self-contained Bible stick. It's got a battery. It's got everything you need with the headphones and everything. It's self-contained package for that serviceman or woman to enjoy the Word of God. It's word for word, dramatized with music and sound effects. And your $100 gift will release 2, not 1, but 2 of these Bible sticks into the hands of servicemen and women that are serving overseas currently. They get the priority, by the way. Those who are overseas get first dibs as these become available.
So again, let me just encourage you to think about whether or not you'd like to not only give, but to give to others as well. And again, this is going to the family.
That's right.
So they can follow along. This is going to the service person in this package, and it is just phenomenal. And so this is just one more way in which you can join with us. And again, don't forget that number. It's 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. We'd love to get a phone call from you right now, and this is a way in which, number one, you can support this ministry at even $1 a day, $30 a month, or $50 a month, or if it's at $100 a month, you can make sure that this goes to a couple of individuals overseas who are defending your freedom, and at the same time, the parents will also receive that so they can follow along as well.
That's right. And let's remind ourselves here that it's not really necessarily the size of the gift. We're looking for full participation. If you believe that Point of View Radio needs to continue being a voice of truth in the culture wars that we are currently engaged in, then we're asking you without any hesitation to give us a call with your very best gift at whatever level the Lord's leading you. 1-800-347-5151. Maybe you can't decide this moment, but you want to talk to your spouse when they come home from work. Write this down, and you can give us a call later if you like, or you can always go online to give by it's pointofview.net/team. That's pointofview.net. You just click on join the team and you can give online. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. 5151.
You know, as you go to the website here, we even have a list, and it's a short list of just all the kinds of things that are being proposed seriously by some of these candidates.
Absolutely crazy.
And the fact that, as we just heard Gary Bauer say just a minute ago, there's a percentage of individuals that say, well, that makes sense. And that's why Point of View is trying to say, wait a minute, it doesn't make sense.
That's right.
And so you're saying, well, I'm really wringing my hands about what's happening in this country. We have some solutions. Of course, it is the Word of God. So go to the website right now, and you can click on that button that is available to you, or, of course, you can give us a call, 800-347-5151. We have a couple of lines open, and we have some individuals ready to take your phone call. So we really do need to hear from you. And when we come back from the break, we're going to be talking for just a few minutes about the whole idea of the Truth Team, but then we're going to be joined by Dinesh D'Souza and his wife, Debbie D'Souza, who grew up in Venezuela, and will share what it was really like once they went and adopted socialism, which is kind of what's on the table right now. We'll continue our conversation right after this.
Last week, the Senate held a vote on the Green New Deal. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York,
I'm the boss.
that young darling of leftists and dancing communists everywhere, believes a special class of people in Washington, D.C. can run our lives and everything else better than we can.
I'm the boss.
It's a clear and present danger to our prosperity and our very survival. Such ideas have failed everywhere they've been tried throughout history. But there's always someone who thinks the problem is not the bad ideas, but the fact that they weren't running the show.
I'm the boss.
On top of that, whenever these ideas grow, there's no room for God or God's people. America's ignorance of socialism needs to be confronted. That's why America needs you on the Truth Team. When you join now, you protect our nation's future, and you get double the impact thanks to a generous matching gift. Joining is fast and easy online at pointofview.net or by phone 800-347-5151. Pointofview.net and 800-347-5151.
Point of View will continue after this.
I just want to thank you so much for all the wonderful programming you have. You're just absolutely fantastic.
I recently started listening to Point of View, and I really found it interesting because of the different subjects you cover. Thank you for that.
I really appreciate everything that you do in keeping us informed.
Thank you, Kerby, for everything that you have been doing. I appreciate all the work that you're doing, advocating for the Word of God. Thank you so much.
Point of View, I think, is absolutely necessary
because it's a Christian perspective, a biblical worldview perspective, and receive very current, up-to-date information about what is really going on, week to week in our culture, which is changing so rapidly, and yet it's morally sliding backwards.
Yeah, I'm just, first of all, I thank you guys. Y'all's program is wonderful, and enjoy it every day. I learn so much every time I listen to it.
Point of View Radio Talk Show.
Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. Each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Thank you for joining me. This is going to be a great week as we have so many really good guests that I know you're going to enjoy. In just a few minutes, we'll be talking with Dinesh D'Souza and his wife, Debbie D'Souza. And you, I think, will appreciate that. Later on, we'll have in studio with us Col Allen West. That'll be a good conversation as well. But I thought just for a minute, I might mention something that has really shocked Hollywood. And that is the movie Unplanned was one that they didn't think was going to do very well. And there were some very good reasons for it. There were a number of news outlets that would not even run their commercials. Then there were people like Planned Parenthood saying this is not a good film for anyone to go to. So at best, they figured maybe it'd make about $3 million. Well, it's made twice as much.
Oh, my goodness.
Twice as much. And Abby Johnson,
Hallelujah.
of course, has been on the program with us, a story about her. And then also, of course, even the actress Ashley Bratcher has been in the news, one, because she found out as she was playing Abby Johnson in the film that her mother, she knew, might have gotten an abortion, but she found out her mother was actually on the abortion table and was going to abort her until she changed her mind. So this particular film has done much better. Matter of fact, the second best for any Pure Flix film ever. And so as a result, sends some signals to Hollywood that the pro-life movement is alive and well, and people are wanting to see those kinds of movies. So it's just another illustration of the importance of making your way to the theater, importance of listening to this program. And as you heard a voice there, you've got our good friend Brad Fisk with us, and we're going to be talking about our Truth Team Week. But it's pretty exciting to see something that is done twice as well as anybody in Hollywood have ever expected.
And we need to rejoice in these victories, because ultimately we know who is going to get the victory over all of this culture war season that we seem to find ourselves in. And it's victories like this, and it's incremental. Just as it's incremental on the negative side, I think it's incremental on the positive side. Victory by victory by victory. That's the way you win a war. You don't do it with one battle. You do it with a whole bunch of battles. And we're asking you to help fund our battle, our place in the battle, our place in the culture wars. And talk to anybody involved in public policy, in worldview teaching, with a Christian biblical point of view. And the name Kerby Anderson will come to the top of that list every single time. But it doesn't happen, Kerby, one day at a time for you, does it?
No, it certainly doesn't. And again, it's a battle that we're fighting. The theme this week is socialism, clear and present danger. Just a few minutes, we talk with Debbie D'Souza, who was born in Caracas, Venezuela, can speak about what socialism has done to her home country of Venezuela. And then we'll, of course, also be talking with Dinesh D'Souza and why he does these films. But it's also why we do Point of View, because we recognize that these battles are ongoing, but at the same time, we're starting to see some real victories. We talk about those victories with Kelly Shackelford on Friday. We're going to be talking about them this week with some of the individuals that we have on this program. And it's just, again, part of what we want to do to try to make a difference in this world and in our nation. And that's why we ask you to consider what you might do to support this ministry. We've talked about this before. For as little as $1 a day, $30 a month, you can join with us.
And you'll be part of of the Truth Team.
And you'll be part of that Truth Team, and that will be really important. But then we also have Liberty Club at $50 a month.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I wanted to spend just a little bit of time on is talking about the Century Club. And you can speak to this perhaps better than anyone, Brad, because one of the things that we've done in the past is make available to individuals what is, of course, this special resource that I'm going to hold up in just a minute. But this one is going to go to the military, and that I want you to really address, because this is going to be something we've added that never done before. And, of course, a little bit later, Col Allen West is going to talk about it even more so.
That's right. So it's called the Bible Stick, and there's various versions of it that are created by Faith Comes by Hearing. They own the patent and created this product. And they've been using the military version of this Bible Stick for various outreaches over a decade now. And they continue to just plant the Word of God into the soldiers' hearts and minds. And this is it's a Bible Stick, a military version made to military spec. And your gift of $100 or more will actually release 2 of these Bible Sticks to 2 people that are stationed overseas. They get the priority, is those who are posted overseas. And they get it not by being passed out. They have to get them by request. The soldier has to go to his chaplain and say, I heard about this Bible Stick. I would love to have one of those. And they'll have the entire New Testament on this tiny little in the palm of your hand device, an MP3 player with the battery and the headphones, everything there in the kit. And their family will receive the disc version of the New Testament as well, if they want to follow along with each other while their husband or father's deployed. Again, 2 of those Bible Sticks for your gift of $100 a month or more. 2 of those Bible Sticks will be released to the field.
And again, you'll receive the Bible Stick even for your gift of $1 a day, $30
Yeah, it's a different
month.
it's the same thing. It's a different color. It's not made to military spec.
And again, for those of you that actually join us at the Century Club, you get the Bible Stick. You also, of course, get our booklets.
Yes.
And I just pulled up the one on archaeology, but we have a lot of others. But just think about this. At $100 level, you get the booklet, you get the Outlook magazine, you will receive your own Bible Stick. But then 2 of these go away to the military, and then these also go to the family. So in a sense, it's 5 of those that are going
That's
out,
right.
5 individuals being benefited from that. And so we want you to think about that. And at any level, I really do want to encourage you to join with us. And one of the good news is that we have been able to, behind the scenes, get a match. So that means that your gift, whatever it might be, is doubled. So if it's $1 a day, it
Every
becomes
deal in the book here.
$2. Yeah. So yeah, maybe we've overwhelmed people a little bit, but that's a good thing to have, because people often wonder, and I have people all the time saying, well, is the match on? Yes, the match is on. So you can help us.
Well, I've been reading the headlines, and just like a lot of you have, and I'll tell you right now, in a way, you shouldn't need any incentives to give us a call and really just say, for the sake of being a part of the war and to pay for the next battle, to help pay for the next battle, could you give? Could you give generously? A gift of $5, $50, $500, it's not the amount. They're all important. Every one of them prayerfully given. Would you please consider being a part of the support team of Point of View? 1-800-347-5151. That's 800-347-5151. You can also give online at pointofview.net. That's pointofview.net. Click on Join the Team, and you'll be taken care of in a couple of minutes.
Again, you'll see that banner says Socialism, Clear and Present Danger. And as you go to that, it has just some of the positions held by the current presidential candidates. And these are just, Medicare for all, wealth tax, Green New Deal, free college tuition, on and on and on. And so if you've ever needed an incentive and believe that it's time to provide an alternative, we need to hear from you. So again, that pledge line number, 800-347-5151. We actually have some individuals in the studio right now, right across the glass from us, waiting for those phone calls. So as we go to a break, this would be a great time for you to call. Your dollar for dollar match is on the table because, as soon as we get Dinesh D'Souza and Debbie D'Souza on, everybody's going to want to listen. So now during the break is a great time to call. 1-800-347-5151, 1-800-347-5151. Or you can go to the website, pointofview.net. Dinesh D'Souza, Debbie D'Souza will be on with us right after this.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
Here we go again. This time, the San Antonio City Council banned Chick-fil-A from serving food at the San Antonio airport. If this sounds familiar, the same thing happened about 4 years ago at the Denver airport. Taking a stand for traditional marriage can get you banned by progressive council members. That was the issue in Denver. But the ban in San Antonio added another twist. The council members also took issue with the fact that Chick-fil-A gives contributions to the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, which has a statement of faith based on a biblical perspective about human sexuality. As I explained back in 2015, the Denver City Council backed down because Denver attorneys warned that barring a business on the basis of political prejudice could result in a First Amendment lawsuit they would most likely lose. We'll have to see what happens in the next few weeks in San Antonio. The ironies here are significant. One councilman said everyone has a place here and everyone should feel welcome when they walk through our airport. But it doesn't seem like Chick-fil-A or other similar businesses are welcome. A representative of the company said this is the first they heard about this when they read the press release from the councilman. The representative reminded him and anyone else that everyone is and should feel welcome at Chick-fil-A. We have a fundamental code of conduct at Chick-fil-A. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. They serve more than 140,000 people on a daily basis without regard to race, gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, or gender identity. A bill in the Texas legislature is being debated that would ensure that the government cannot punish religious groups, businesses, counselors, wedding vendors, or others for their sincerely held religious beliefs. That is one remedy to blatant viewpoint discrimination. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
For a free copy of Kerby's booklet, A Biblical View on Socialism, go to viewpoints.info/socialism. That's viewpoints.info/socialism. Point of View, Truth Team 360.
Hey, this is John Stonestreet, the host of Breakpoint and the president of the Colson Center for Christian Worldview. As a champion of Christians thinking clearly about what's happening in the culture from a Christian worldview, there are a few people that I look to for more clarity and confidence and providing clear answers to the big questions that our culture is asking. And Kerby Anderson, I love what happens on Point of View each and every day. And anytime I get the opportunity to be a guest on the program, I always think that Kerby is the best interviewer in the business. I encourage you to support Point of View with your prayers and with your financial support.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
And again, this is an opportunity for you to join with us. And as we just mentioned a minute ago, we do have a match on the table. That number is 800-347-5151. And in studio with me, Brad Fisk. And we will, as we go through even this interview we're going to do with Debbie D'Souza and Dinesh D'Souza, encourage you to support this ministry. But I thought for just a few minutes, we might start, usually when we have Dinesh, he's usually in studio, we talk to him. But Debbie, I want to talk to you for a different reason. And that is the theme this week is socialism, clear and present danger. You were born in Caracas, Venezuela. Anybody that's watched you sing may be surprised to find out that you started singing on a weekly variety show, La Voces Blancas, years ago. And, of course, as an individual that was singing on the death of a nation. But I wanted to get your comments because one of the things that we have done on our website today is have a link to this excellent video that you did with Prager University on socialism in Venezuela. So Speak to that issue, if you would, for just a minute, because we have a whole generation of young people that think socialism is a good idea. And I just keep saying, just look at what's happening in Venezuela. What would you say?
Well, from a personal perspective, I mean, I chat with my cousin every day about what's going on right now, and for the last 3 weeks, he has only had electricity for 10 hours. And this is a guy that graduated with a mechanical engineering degree, very smart guy, who is now having to resort to living like a caveman. He actually built a generator and has been using it out of his car for the last 3 weeks because he doesn't have any electricity. So to young people, I say, is this the kind of life that you want? and I don't think they do. First of all, they don't know where the money comes from. They think everything is free and given to them. But what they don't know is that they are, because they're doing that, they're exploiting the very people that make the money and that give them jobs. And so, what happened in Venezuela is they ran out of people's money. People, yes. Business owners, entrepreneurs, doctors, they all left Venezuela.
Yes.
And the money that was left was stolen by the regime. And so here we are. Venezuela is literally a failed state, and people don't have any hope anymore. They don't know what's going to come next. So socialism is a very immoral ideology. It robs people's soul. It's equal misery for all, and it doesn't serve any purpose but damage and despair.
One of the things I thought I would add to that is that I did a commentary just recently on Venezuela. It was interesting that the picture they decided to put next to it was showing some people digging through the garbage in Caracas just to try to find food. But I point out that I had a colleague whose husband traveled to Venezuela back in its heydays when they had not nationalized all of the oil and hadn't taken it all over. And there was a great deal of prosperity in Venezuela. And if you would unleash a free market, I think Venezuela could be one of the more prosperous countries in the Latin American area, don't you think?
Well, it was prosperous when it was a free market. Absolutely. I was born in Venezuela in 1966. I left as a child. My parents divorced, and unfortunately, the circumstances, that is what brought me to America. But it was a beautiful country. I had pretty much every amenity that I could possibly get my hands on. My parents were upper middle class. So for those people that say that Venezuela was either you were extremely wealthy or extremely poor, that is not true. We were middle class, and we had a fairly good living. We made a pretty good living, and I needed nothing. I mean, I had everything I possibly could want as a child. I had toys. I had, the thing that I talked to my cousin about is he has no electricity, and I tell him, I said, this is something that I can't even imagine. I'm trying to picture myself in Venezuela now in 2019, when in 1974 we had everything we wanted and needed. And, wow. And the reason is that we had a free market. We had free elections, a free market, a political system that was very similar to the one here. We had two political parties that dominated. One was center-right, the other one was center-left. And unfortunately, in 1999, when Hugo Chavez ran for president, he ran on the Hope and Change campaign because yes. There was, I think you yes. know where I'm going with that yep. one. And so, there was political corruption, and so he was like, I'm going to be the candidate that's going to change all that, and he ran as a centrist, and my grandparents voted for him in the first and only election that was actually legitimate. It was not, they didn't cheat to win. So they voted for him, and they lived to regret it. My grandparents are no longer living, but they certainly lived to regret that vote.
Wow. Brad Fisk in studio with us. And just before we get to Dinesh, let's talk about this, because this, I think, just underscores again the need to educate this next generation that's just convinced that socialism is utopia and it's anything but in Venezuela.
Venezuela is Exhibit A, really, if you think about it. How can anybody ignore what's going on there and to know that the root cause is socialism?
Yes.
At its best, if you want to use the word best in the same sentence as socialism, but it really is. And thanks, Debbie, for the testimony, because that gives us such an inside view that what we're seeing on the outside is exactly what's going on the inside. So this is tragic. This is more than tragic. People are dying. People are really being affected by this. And you can be a part of the Truth Team 360 by giving us a voice to continue to talk about countries like Venezuela. Here's the line, the pledge line. It's 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. Do you want to continue to give a voice for truth? Give us a call right now, won't you? 800-347-5151.
Let me also bring to the microphone, obviously, Dinesh D'Souza, been on the program with us many times before. We've talked about everything from Obama's America, Hillary's America, death of a nation, and on the rest. Individual born in Mumbai, India, and a graduate of Dartmouth. And Dinesh, again, that's one of the reasons you produce these films and have written those books all the way back to, I remember the first time I read you, Illiberal Education. There is just a need for us to educate a whole new generation that's just convinced that socialism is better than capitalism.
Yeah, I've been scratching my head, Kerby, to think about how it is that we are back in a debate that we thought was settled in the 20th century. It appeared that with the collapse of the Soviet Union, China moving in a capitalist direction, India as well, the comparison between North and South Korea, that this was sort of something that we now knew, and that there wouldn't be a regress to, trying to fish good old Marx out of his grave and try to repackage his ideas. So I suspect we're dealing here with a certain historical amnesia, but I also think that there is a kind of new face to to socialism. It appears now in a kind of technological garb. It seems to assume a certain degree of plenty, and it makes claims that even the old socialists would never have dared to make. Things like we want a society where we don't even have to. If we don't want to work, we shouldn't be made to work.
Let me jump in real quickly because I do want to get some more of your comments. But, Brad, we are going to a break. We have some individuals waiting to answer the phones. And so, again, we just need to hear from you. 800-347-5151. For as little as $1 a day, $30 a month, you can join with us, or $50 a month. Yes.
It'll be doubled.
And then even the Century Club. And we've been talking about some of that. So we have a match on the table right now. So if you say, well, I could probably come up with $1 a day. That all of a sudden becomes $2 a day.
That's right.
$30 a month becomes $60 a month. And so we really do need to hear from you. And at a break is a good time because everybody loves to hear Dinesh D'Souza and Debbie D'Souza. So call us now, 800-347-5151, or you can go to the website, pointofview.net. We'll be right back.
Last week, the Senate held a vote on the Green New Deal. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York,
I'm the boss.
that young darling of leftists and dancing communists everywhere, believes a special class of people in Washington, D.C. can run our lives and everything else better than we can.
I'm the boss.
It's a clear and present danger to our prosperity and our very survival. Such ideas have failed everywhere they've been tried throughout history. But there's always someone who thinks the problem is not the bad ideas, but the fact that they weren't running the show.
I'm the boss.
On top of that, whenever these ideas grow, there's no room for God or God's people. America's ignorance of socialism needs to be confronted. That's why America needs you on the Truth Team. When you join now, you protect our nation's future, and you get double the impact thanks to a generous matching gift. Joining is fast and easy online at pointofview.net or by phone 800-347-5151. Pointofview.net. and 800-347-5151.
Point of View will continue after this. You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Continue our conversation in just a minute. We'll get back to Dinesh and Debbie D'Souza. Let me just mention that, first of all, we have a link to DineshD'Souza.com. You don't even have to know how to spell it. It's right there. You're going to see some of the great interaction and debates that he's done. I want to come back to that in just a minute. And for Debbie D'Souza, we have a link, a special link that we've created so that you can follow and watch that Prager University video by Again, Socialism in Venezuela. On both of these, I would encourage you to hit the share button and put it on your Facebook page, or maybe send it to someone who needs to know that. But also in studio with us today, Brad Fisk. And Brad, we're in the midst of our Truth Team Week.
We are.
And let's talk for just a minute before we go back to our conversation, because we are dependent upon the financial gifts of our listeners.
We say everybody can do something, and so I'd like to really focus on that phrase, Kerby, for just a minute. $1 a day. That's $30 a month, $360 a year. Everybody within the sound of my voice, minus a few, can actually do that. It may be a bit of a stretch, or maybe not at all. Could we have, with about 8 to 10 of you, in the next 10 minutes, give us a call at 800-347-5151 with that $1 a day gift. 800-347-5151, and your $1 a day will become $2 a day thanks to some friends of the ministry with a match challenge. 800-347-5151. If you believe we should continue to have a voice to put guests on the air like we do every single day, give us a call and support us, won't you? 800-347-5151.
Might just mention that some of the people answering the phones are friends, as well as my wife is answering the phone today, so
nice.
you might ever get a chance to chat with her or some of the other staff. But Dinesh D'Souza with us. And Dinesh, you mentioned that we have these individuals that want to resurrect Karl Marx from the grave. And I remember when I was in graduate school at Georgetown, I decided, I'm going to take a class on Marxism from a socialist. And I thought what was happening at the time was what Karl Marx did in the 19th century, and even some of the Marxists in my class were, in a sense, comparing the free enterprise system to utopia. Karl Marx was comparing some of the dislocation of the Industrial Revolution to utopia. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why you have a whole generation of young people today that oftentimes think that socialism is better than capitalism.
I think that's definitely part of it. You could call it the utopian temptation. I think the other part of it is to make comparisons that conceal the costs. A good example is recently Bernie Sanders made the point that it costs $70 to have a child in Norway, but $12,000 in the United States. Now, you could get the impression that, in fact, having a kid in Norway just costs $70. It's kind of like, that we pay the doctor $35 and then we pay the hospital $35, and that's the cost of having a kid. No. In fact, it costs a lot more to have a child, but those costs are borne by other people. Either the doctor is paid less, or in effect, you could almost say, it would be almost like if I were to go around to my neighbors and tell them, hey, listen, I'm thinking of having a kid. Why don't each of you pitch in $500 and I'll chip in the last 70? They'd be like, are you insane?
Great line.
You're the guy who had the fun of making the kid. You pay for it. But this is intended to bamboozle people who don't have a simple idea of how economics works to think, wow, it just costs so much less over there, and so socialism is just works so much better than the capitalist system.
Well, and again, that gets back to this long list that we've provided for individuals if they want to read it all: Medicare for all, Green New Deal, living wage, government daycare, guaranteed basic income, on and on and on, reparations. You've looked at this in a lot of the films, whether it's Hillary's America, Obama's America, The Death of a Nation, whatever it might be. In every particular case, the cost is hidden, and that's intentional. And the mainstream media doesn't seem to be doing such a great job of pointing out that this is going to cost you something. But even, and I do want to underscore, even former President Barack Obama sat down the other day, we now find out, with some of the House Democrat freshmen saying, guys, you really do need to look at the price tags. Yes, I love big, bold ideas, but you also have to think about the cost of some of these as well, don't you?
You certainly do, and you also have to think about something like this notion of global warming. The claim is that the Earth's temperature has marginally risen, usually by about an average of a degree per century. But let's say it were 2 degrees. Now let's think about how we as normal people respond to shifts in temperature. If I go outside and it's kind of warm, I take off my jacket. If it's kind of cold, I put one on. I don't try to change the Earth's temperature. I adapt myself to the climate and not the other way around. So it would seem that even if we are seeing a gradual warming, there'd be all kinds of ways that we could easily adapt to it rather than trying to figure out a way to change the amount of atmospheric gases that are released, as if we could somehow regulate the Earth's temperature, which would seem to be a far more quixotic proposition.
Well, and again, whenever we've had some of the debates, and of course you do a lot of debates, and later this week we have Jay Richards just debated a socialist at Notre Dame, and of course we've already pointed people to your website with some of the discussions, debates, and presentations. You just need to present the other side, and on whether it's global warming or whether it's Medicare for all or the Green New Deal or socialism versus capitalism or lowering the voting age to 16, reparations, or eliminating the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency. You just have to say there are consequences to these actions, and it seems to me that that's what we try to do here at Point of View, and I know that's what you've tried to do in both your books and your films.
Yeah, I think that it's very important not only to critique these programs, but also to make the moral argument for capitalism. One of the things that Marx did, which was very clever, is he basically said that the capitalist provides only one thing, and that's capital. And he used that as the basis to say that everything else is supplied by labor, and therefore the profits of a company should go 100% to the laborers, and the entrepreneur doesn't deserve anything because he's already been paid interest for his capital. But essentially what Marx was concealing is the fact that when you have a business, who comes up with the idea for the business? The entrepreneur. Who organizes the business? The entrepreneur. Who takes all the risk? The entrepreneur. The employees don't. They're contractually bound. They get paid whether or not Starbucks has a profitable quarter. And so what Marx is doing is he's sort of hiding the ball by concealing what the entrepreneur's actual contributions are. He makes it seem horribly unjust that this is a guy who's making off with the lion's share of the profit.
And again, those are some things that only come when you have kind of a point-counterpoint debate or a discussion. I've seen you use that in some of your presentations. Ben Shapiro, of course, I have. And, of course, I mentioned Jay Richards and some of the others. Gary Bauer was on a little bit earlier. But just before we go, I wanted to just hear from both you and Debbie what you have planned for the future, because I thought that piece that Debbie did was just very outstanding on warning people about socialism. And I know enough about Dinesh D'Souza to know you probably have something in the works that you're working on, and maybe you'd like to tell our listeners.
Well, I mean, Debbie and I collaborate very closely now with stuff, and we're thinking about doing a movie for next year. I think with the kind of collapse of this Mueller investigation, we were going to focus on the relationship between the deep state and the Democratic Party, the media. We'll do some of that, but we're also going to look at the socialist temptation, and we're going to use the laboratory case of Venezuela, but of course also those ideas in America. So our plans are to work on this stuff, and I'm going to do a book of the same title to come out at about the same time.
Again, DineshD'Souza.com is the website, and you don't have to even know how to spell it. It's right there. We also, of course, have that link to, again, that section on socialism in Venezuela. And, of course, the theme, Brad, as we've talked about, is this idea of socialism, clear and present danger. So I'm looking forward to the next film that'll come out, too.
Oh, me too. This whole interview, just in the last, hour, is a great example of what we're asking our listeners to fund for the future. We want to have a future here, but unless we're fully funded, we can't. So we need your help, and we're asking you to help us make this first hour a banner hour. 1-800-347-5151. 1-800-347-5151. $1 a day. $1 a day, $30 a month. Come on, you guys, give us a call.
Dinesh and Debbie, thank you so very much. And, of course, Dinesh, you know, every time you do a film, we like to do everything we can to promote it. So we're looking forward to the next opportunity. And thank you for joining us today here on Point of View.
Certainly. Appreciate it. We've enjoyed it. Thank you.
Let's take a break. But just before we do so, let's talk about that. For as little as $1 a day, $30 a month, you can obviously receive the Bible stick that we've been talking about. And, of course, the Outlook magazine. At the century level, you also, of course, receive that as well as our booklets. Here's the one on archaeology. And when we come back from the break, let's talk a little bit more about what you can receive at the Century Club, because this is something we've actually begun to develop that not only allows you to be blessed by some of the material, but to bless some of those in the military. Of course, Colonel Allen West will be with us as well, so that'll be great to hear his comments. But now, as we go to a break, I know some of you have enjoyed the interview, but now we need to hear from you.
Yes, please.
1-800-347-5151. 1-800-347-5151. 1-800-347-5151. I see some people waiting for your phone call, so now is the time to call. Every dollar doubled.
Yes. 800-347-5151. Let's fill the phones. Come on, let's go.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
I'm so glad to have the Kingdom Keys Network that presents Point of View program and replays it by recording at night so I can catch up on what I miss. It is the highlight of my day. I don't have Wi-Fi or cable news access, so radio is almost my sole means of reception of news. And Point of View helps me understand the political landscape and apply Christian values to it. I'm so honored to be able to give to Point of View. It is a most worthy Christian outreach. We need their informed voice to speak to the issues we face each day.
It is so refreshing to hear the conversation. A day and age when this world is so troubled, and it's refreshing, and I'm glad to hear some straight point, straight talk. So thank you, and keep up the good work.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
Some nice comments from a number of listeners, and let me just mention that in the next hour we're going to have Col Allen West in studio with us. Here's his most recent book, and again I just thought I'd mention that he will be with us. And of course we have Brad Fisk in studio with us, and also Warren Kelly, president of Point of View. But Brad, let's remind our listeners we have some people waiting for some phone calls to ring.
We do indeed. It is Truth Team Week, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages. Time for you to step into the center ring and give us a call with your very best gift. 1-800-347-5151. If you are not currently standing with us financially, won't you prayerfully consider that gift of $1 a day? Join the Truth Team 360. 1-800-347-5151.
Warren Kelly with us. And Warren, we thought we might, for just a few minutes, talk about why we are focusing on socialism, clear and present danger. Now, if anybody goes to the website and clicks on that, then there is a short list, and I do mean a short list of some of the platform positions held by a lot of these candidates: Medicare for all, the Green New Deal, wealth tax, guaranteed income, free college tuition, guaranteed income for all, as well as some of the others we've mentioned. And the reason we are doing this is because we recognize that even though we might look at that, as many of our listeners do, and say, how are you going to pay for this? This doesn't make any sense. These are crazy ideas. Unfortunately, as we talked about earlier with Gary Bauer, there are just a lot of individuals that have graduated from high school and college that accept those, right?
They do. And unfortunately, there is just very little education about the topic of socialism that happens in our public education system. Most Americans will tell you today that they have very little education, very little teaching on socialism ever. Most of them can't define what the term means. So that's a real problem.
Well, and again, if you don't know what it means, Brad, you can see we got a problem here, because then they just say, well, it sounds good, so I'm all in, right?
That's right. But it's programs like Point of View, because we really are talking truth. Because there is a lot of truth, a lot of lying going on the other side. They are simply misleading the American public with bold-faced lies and misdirection. And we here at Point of View are standing up against that and saying, enough. We must stand up for the truth, capital T.
And one of the things we talk about so often, Brad, and also Warren, is that we try to cover a lot of different issues. And of course, at the moment, we're focusing on socialism per se, but of course, all of those are important issues. But I thought it'd be helpful, Warren, for you to explain just where does the money go? Because a lot of people say, well, you're just a small little radio station, because they forget that we're on a lot more than just their local radio station, right?
Right. We're not just on their local radio station. We have stations across the country, 260 radio stations that carry the broadcast. So we have a huge audience. So your gift helps to reach those people. And as we've been saying, the people in America that are listening to these kind of platforms because they don't understand the outcomes. They don't make the connection between Venezuela and those kinds of outcomes, or those kinds of platforms, positions. So the solution to the problem is to train them, to teach them, to help them understand. And the best thing that we can do is take that army of listeners that are out there listening right now, to give them the tools so that they can go out into the culture and they can make a difference within their circle of influence and multiply that out throughout the culture. So that's what your gift does. It helps to change the culture in a powerful way.
Did you know, and I know this, we have a huge audience, you said a few moments ago, on over 200 stations, well over 200, and a very small percentage, it's probably, our research shows around 3 or 4% of that audience is a part of the giving family. They're part of the listening family, and there's a lot more of them, but we're asking every single person who listens to Point of View on a regular basis during any length of time to give us a call with their support.
Absolutely. We need that support. We rely on you, because it is a very, very small percentage of the population, or our listening audience rather, that gives at any time to support the ministry. So we really rely, especially those of you who are part of the Truth Team, we really rely on you to give us the support that we need to keep going.
And you said something just a minute ago about the fact that we've seen the impact. I was making the short list here of, we know of people that have run for school board. We know people that have gone into school libraries and complained about this. We know people that have started pregnancy centers. We know people that have started Christian schools. We know people that decided to homeschool. We of course, so often with Kelly Shackelford talk about people that have stood up for their religious liberty because they knew that they could actually do so.
Yep.
So without any hesitation, that's why we ask you to give us a call at 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. And Brad, dollars doubled right now, right?
That's right. There's a match challenge on the table. Every dollar you give will be doubled dollar for dollar. And there are 2 lines open right now, so you'll get straight in with no busy signals. Give us a call, won't you, at 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151 or online at pointofview.net. That's pointofview.net.
And again, sometimes we say that nothing like sunlight to drive some of those individuals into the corners
The
there.
roaches you're talking about?
But you know only so well that when people started saying, wait a minute, like, for example, the other day, the vote for the Green New Deal goes into the United States Senate. And it was interesting that every one of the Democrats voted present because they didn't even want to vote for something they've been talking about.
Yep.
So, let's give you the chance to vote for it. Let's bring this out into the sunlight. Even my commentary today. Let's just let everybody know that Chick-fil-A was not allowed to have a restaurant in the San Antonio airport. That won't last long, as we know, and that's what Point of View does. It tells you stories that you hear nowhere else.
Warren, the one bedrock value of Point of View Radio is to stand on the Bible. Could you talk more about that for just a moment, the importance of biblical truth?
All truth is biblical truth. And so we recognize that biblical truth impacts every area of your life. And so Kerby was running through the list of people who have gone on to do other things to help influence and shape the culture. They've done it in education. They've done it through the medical system. They've done it through the legal system. They've done it through so many different, the political system, and on it goes. We want to apply biblical truth to every area of life, and that's what you help do when you give. You're helping an army of listeners to take that biblical truth back out into the culture. So many times people don't understand how to stand for their faith within the culture, and that's what we're doing. We're giving them the tools and the ability to speak truth in love to their circle of influence.
And ladies and gentlemen, you are not going to get biblical truth from all those liberal talk shows and all those politicians. Like you said, the people with no courage to even vote for something they've been supporting outside of the Senate chambers. And, we got to stand up. We have to stand up and be unified together. And we will help you do that if you'll help us. Please, 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. Remember, a gift of $1 a day or more, we're going to give you the Bible stick from Faith Comes by Hearing as a gift. That's the entire New Testament on a tiny MP3 player that'll fit in the palm of your hand. It is yours as a thank you gift for your generous gift of $1 a day or more.
Again, we need to hear from you. 1-800-347-5151. Don't forget, at the higher levels, you receive some of these booklets on everything from archaeology and drug abuse and campus unrest and all the rest. And, of course, at the century level, we've encouraged you to not only support your individuals in your family, but those in the military. So, again, great time to call. 800-347-5151, pointofview.net. We need to hear from you. We have a line open, so we need to hear from you right now. 1-800-347-5151.
Come on. Let's go.
Last week, the Senate held a vote on the Green New Deal. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York,
I'm the boss.
that young darling of leftists and dancing communists everywhere, believes a special class of people in Washington, D.C. can run our lives and everything else better than we can.
I'm the boss.
It's a clear and present danger to our prosperity and our very survival. Such ideas have failed everywhere they've been tried throughout history. But there's always someone who thinks the problem is not the bad ideas, but the fact that they weren't running the show.
I'm the boss.
On top of that, whenever these ideas grow, there's no room for God or God's people. America's ignorance of socialism needs to be confronted. That's why America needs you on the Truth Team. When you join now, you protect our nation's future, and you get double the impact thanks to a generous matching gift. Joining is fast and easy online at pointofview.net or by phone 800-347-5151. Pointofview.net and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
I just want to thank you so much for all the wonderful programming you have. You're just absolutely fantastic.
I recently started listening to Point of View, and I really found it interesting because of the different subjects you cover. Thank you for that.
I really appreciate everything that you do in keeping us informed.
Thank you, Kerby, for everything that you have been doing. I appreciate all the work that you're doing, advocating for the Word of God. Thank you so much.
Point of view, I think, is absolutely necessary because it's a Christian perspective, a biblical worldview perspective, and receive very current, up-to-date information about what is really going on, week to week in our culture, which is changing so rapidly, and yet it's morally sliding backwards.
Yeah, I'm just, first of all, I thank you guys. Y'all's program is wonderful, and enjoy it every day. I learn so much every time I listen to it.
Point of View Radio Talk Show.
Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View continues right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Back once again. If you would like to join our conversation, we certainly want you to do so, because we certainly want to hear from you. The conversation today is, of course, it's Truth Team Week, and if you can join us, the pledge line number is 800-347-5151, and we have in studio with us Brad Fisk, but we also are bringing into the studio Col Allen West. But Brad, I think you got some thank yous for just a minute.
Just a few here. We can't do everybody, but thank you, Bonnie, checking in from Missouri. Thank you very much to Sandra, checking in with us with a generous gift, and another generous gift from Marty. Thank you, from Crosby, Mississippi. So we're so grateful for a few of these. We have more coming, but it's your turn. It's your turn to be a part of the group that says, I'm going to stand with you financially. 800-347-5151. Consider joining the Truth Team. $1 a day, $30 a month, $360 for the year. 800-347-5151.
Got our good friend in studio with us, Col Allen West. That, by the way, is his latest book, Hold Texas, Hold the Nation, subtitled Victory or Death, which I love as well. Yeah. Graduated the University of Tennessee, which, we watched them on the March Madness.
Couldn't
and
stop
an individual
the three-pointer.
that couldn't stop the three-pointer.
Couldn't stop the three-pointers, man. Purdue.
But it was fun to watch, and it is still fun to watch. And, of course, an individual that not only graduated from the University of Tennessee, but has 2 master's degrees, as well as served, of course, with distinction in the military, and also represented Florida's 22nd District. And just always great to have you in studio.
It's good to be
us.
here, although I look at the list of who you had before me, and, you're really stepping down, guys. Gary Bauer, Dinesh, and Debbie D'Souza. That's a double whopper. And then you pick up old dumb paratrooper that was out there thumbing a ride on I-635. Come on, man.
There is something I want to talk about with you for just a minute before I get into some of these issues, and that is that, Brad, we have always made available the Bible stick, but we're doing something a little different, and that is that for $1 a day, $30 a month, you receive the Bible stick. Of course, you receive as well the various Outlook magazine. At $50 a month, which is the Liberty Club, you receive those as well as these booklets.
Yes.
There's one on campus unrest, one on archaeology, one on constitutional interpretation. There's lots and lots of those. But at the $100 level, you receive all of that. You also receive the Bible stick, but something else we were doing, which I hope people would appreciate, and I'm holding this up right now. This is the military edition of the Bible stick, done by our friends by Faith Comes by Hearing. And not only would this go to people in the military, I want you to explain that for just a minute, but this goes to the parents. Or
family,
whatever, maybe
kids,
the wife or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
So then, while he or she is listening to the Bible, they can be following along,
at home.
And we'll give 2 of those. So talk about that, because I'd like to have somebody who's served in the military talk about the value of this.
The way it works with the military establishment is the chaplain is the guy who helps with resources. So a serviceman or woman have to go to the chaplain and say, if you have any Bible sticks, I'd love to have one. And typically they do, because they are so popular, and donors find them so popular to fund. And so they get, for free, for no charge, the entire New Testament dramatized, and it's got sound effects and music. Very easy to listen to, the ESV version. And it's all military grade, so there's no question there. So actually, if you give $100 a month or more, 2 of those Bible stick packages will go out to that serviceman's family and to themselves for use in the field. And we always give priority to those that are deployed. They get the priority.
Well, absolutely. And I think that's a great thing. You know, having served in several different combat zones, Desert Shield, Desert Storm, Iraq, and some time in Afghanistan, it is so important when you have that downtime, that quiet time, to find that solitude and peace with the Lord. And in a lot of these countries that we are deploying our men and women to, one of the things they're not allowed to openly have are Bibles. Mm-hmm. So this is a great way for these young men and women to still be able to stay in touch with their spiritual fitness and their faith while they're deployed into these combat zones. And, you know, there was once a saying that, you know, in a foxhole, no one's an atheist. I can tell you that when bullets start flying, people start praying because they know from whence their blessings do come. And you're right, chaplains are the greatest combat multiplier.
Yes.
In a deployed
Good
unit.
way to put it. I like that.
No, they are, because there are things that young men and women are going to go to the chaplains and talk to them about, and they're going to open themselves up to. Mm-hmm. They're not going to come to the sergeant major. They're not going to come to the battalion commander. They're not going to go to their, you know, company commanders or whomever. So this is really important.
It is.
And I would encourage folks out there, not just supporting the Point of View ministry, but supporting those men and women that are deployed and helping them through some tough times while they're deployed, because their spiritual fitness and their faith needs to be bolstered.
This hour, while you're with us, we're asking the Lord for 5 people at $100 a month to step up, join the Century Club, and release those Bible sticks to the men and women who really need them in the service. So here's the phone number, 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151, and you can always give online at pointofview.net. That's pointofview.net.
You know, Colonel West, one of the things we're talking about is this theme, socialism, clear and present danger.
Yes.
And one of the concerns that we've talked about, you mentioned Gary Bauer and also Debbie and Dinesh D'Souza, and I want to keep the theme going, is we have a whole group of young people that think that socialism is better than capitalism. Mm-hmm. We tried to explain last hour from Debbie D'Souza, who was born in Caracas, Venezuela, what it looks like there.
Absolutely.
But you've traveled around the world in the military. You've been in combat zones. Mm-hmm. You've seen the difference between a free market and a socialist economy. What are your thoughts?
Sure. You know, as a young second lieutenant, I was stationed with an airborne unit in Vicenza, Italy. And one of the training rotations we went on was to go to Berlin because they had this really exquisite combat in the cities platform that was set up there, buildings and everything, you know, sewage, what have you. But during that time period, and this was 1985, during that time period, it was a 3-week training rotation. You got one day. Mm-hmm. One day, and you carried your Class A uniform with you because you got to go through a place called Checkpoint Charlie.
Wow.
And so that day came, put on your Class A uniform, spit shine jump boots, your maroon paratrooper beret, load up the buses, and you go through that corridor, that narrow corridor that takes you from liberty and freedom to tyranny.
Wow.
And when you get on the other side and you're walking the streets with East German soldiers, Soviet commanders and whatever, but you see the despair.
Yes.
You see the despondency,
yes.
You see the depression, you see buildings that still have potholes from World War II, you see the horrible conditions of the streets. I mean, you know, Dallas streets look like paved by gold compared to what we saw in East Berlin.
Yeah.
But what was so amazing was that there was no happiness in the faces of the people. You went into the stores, hardly anything's on the shelves. And, of course, you have the East German Stasi, the secret police following you. Just make sure you don't have any contact. But the interesting thing, guys, when you looked up to the top, to the TV antennas, every single one of them was pointed to West Berlin.
That says something, right?
They saw, you know, that difference. And what is amazing to me is when you look at what is happening in Venezuela, it was just 20 years ago. Wow. Venezuela was completely different. And so in the twinkling of an eye, something like this can happen. And so this is what we have to keep hammering this message on. This is why Point of View is so important, because that secular humanism, they don't believe in our faith.
That's right.
1-800-347-5151. We need to hear from you. Be right back.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
Here we go again. This time, the San Antonio City Council banned Chick-fil-A from serving food at the San Antonio airport. If this sounds familiar, the same thing happened about 4 years ago at the Denver airport. Taking a stand for traditional marriage can get you banned by progressive council members. That was the issue in Denver. But the ban in San Antonio added another twist. The council members also took issue with the fact that Chick-fil-A gives contributions to the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, which has a statement of faith based on a biblical perspective about human sexuality. As I explained back in 2015, the Denver City Council backed down because Denver attorneys warned that barring a business on the basis of political prejudice could result in a First Amendment lawsuit they would most likely lose. We'll have to see what happens in the next few weeks in San Antonio. The ironies here are significant. One councilman said, "Everyone has a place here and everyone should feel welcome when they walk through our airport." But it doesn't seem like Chick-fil-A or other similar businesses are welcome. A representative of the company said this is the first they heard about this when they read the press release from the councilman. The representative reminded him and anyone else that everyone is and should feel welcome at Chick-fil-A. We have a fundamental code of conduct at Chick-fil-A, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. They serve more than 140,000 people on a daily basis without regard to race, gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, or gender identity. A bill in the Texas legislature is being debated that would ensure that the government cannot punish religious groups, businesses, counselors, wedding vendors, or others for their sincerely held religious beliefs. That is one remedy to blatant viewpoint discrimination. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
For a free copy of Kerby's booklet, A Biblical View on Socialism, go to viewpoints.info/socialism. That's viewpoints.info/socialism. Point of View, Truth Team 360.
Hi, this is June Hunt from Hope for the Heart. Kerby and his guests are biblically based, and they bring a conservative voice to today's issues. I want to encourage you to honor this ministry with a special financial gift. You can do that at pointofview.net. That's pointofview.net. And Kerby, I thank God for your ministry. You are needed in our world, because truth is needed in our hearts.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
Comments by June Hunt, and in studio with us today, Brad Fisk, as well as Allen West, going to be taking some things from his book, Hold Texas, Hold the Nation, especially the subtitle, Victory or Death. We'll get to that in just a minute. But I was just thinking, Brad, that we have in the past talked about individuals that have started Christian schools, started pregnancy resource centers, gone into the school libraries and protested something that has happened, run for the school board, run for the city council, maybe even decided to homeschool their families.
And I talked to, in a homeschooling world, which I'm very attached to, I hear your name all the time, where it was your influence that made a difference for their kids going to homeschool.
Not to mention the whole issue of religious liberty, which we talk about with Kelly Shackelford on Friday. But I wanted to come to our good friend, Col Allen West. Victory or death. 26 years of age when that letter was written at the Alamo. Explain a little bit more about the subtitle of your book.
Well, that letter, 24 February 1836, there at the Alamo, the incredible stand that was made for 13 days, Lieutenant Colonel William Barrett Travis, originally from South Carolina, he saw the situation and he wrote a letter that he had Juan Seguin, for whom Seguin, Texas is named after, delivered to Sam Houston. and he talked about, his situation. It was basically a situation report, but it was a brilliantly written letter. But he talked about how even with the amount of troops that the Mexicans in Santa Ana was bringing, that he would not surrender, he would not retreat. He talked about the fact that he understood the criticality of this, and he called upon, the American character. And he said that he was willing to stand and die like a soldier for the honor of himself and his country. Wow. And he concluded with the words, victory or death. A 26-year-old.
Wow.
Now, why aren't we talking to all of these millennials here in Texas that were out there listening to that screaming banshee by the name of Bob O'Rourke talk about, all of these socialist policies and whatever? Because if we don't share those stories, we don't raise the next generation of Travises, right, or Crockett's or Houston's or Seguin's or whatever. And so that's so important that we do that. And that's why, what you're all doing here, Point of View, is important. Let me segue to something else. There was a movie that came out over this weekend called Unplanned. And I got the opportunity to go see Unplanned for screening last week, Tuesday. I consider myself a pretty tough guy, but I was fighting back tears. Mm-hmm. That movie Unplanned is based out of here in Texas. Right. The story of Abby Johnson, what happened in Bryan, Texas, and, of course, that incredible Planned Parenthood headquarters down in Houston. But think about the fact that the Motion Picture Association of America gave that movie an R rating.
Right.
So people say that a young person can go get an abortion without parental notification, but a young person under 17 cannot go see the movie about what happens to them if they go get this done. But yet they want 16-year-olds to also be able to vote. And then the other thing, Jack Dorsey and Twitter, they suspended the account for that movie, their Twitter handle, Unplanned. And then also we had, many different networks saying that they would not advertise the trailer. Right. This is why we need Point of View, folks, because there is a sincere effort out there to silence, when we talk about fascism, that's what fascism is all about. How we saw them try to undermine a movie that was based upon the life of the youngest clinic director in Planned Parenthood's history.
And what I think was so interesting, we led with this, that they were expecting maybe to make $3 million. And that is probably an optimistic assumption, given the fact that you had so many things happen. Planned Parenthood had all sorts of things coming out. Facebook blew up about, this is not accurate, and on and on and on. And, of course, they wouldn't allow them to advertise. But instead, they made twice as much, $6 million. Of course, we've had Abby Johnson on this program. If you say, well, who's Abby Johnson? I hope none of our listeners say that because we've had her on.
Right.
You might say, well, the actress that played Abby Johnson, well, that's Ashley Bratcher. And we talked about her story, which is an incredible story, Brad. If you've never heard it, she knew that her mother had gotten an abortion. What she didn't know until after she started playing Abby Johnson, calls up her mother's just brokenhearted and says, I got to tell you something. I was on the abortion table to abort you when I changed my mind. So then Ashley she's just shocked about that. So then she calls her dad, because she's always had kind of a strained relationship with her mother, asked her dad if that was true. And her dad said, well, it's even worse. I actually pawned a shotgun to come up with the money for the abortion. And then we decided to keep you. So, these are stories that are just going everywhere. And we've had the director of this movie, the producer of it, and some of those, including the person that the movie's all about, on the program. You don't hear that on MSNBC or CNN, do you?
You're not going to hear that. And again, this is her true story. That, of course, they took her to court to try to get her to not be able to tell that story. And now that the story is out, they still are trying to undermine and keep her from telling that story. But again, let's go back to how we were talking about Travis. Here she was, that the other side, the left, recruited her and gave her that incredible responsibility to be the youngest clinic director in Planned Parenthood history. See, the other side is willing to, allow our young people to have positions of responsibility and to have a voice. Then we got a person like William Barrett Travis that most people, even here in Texas, did not know he was 26 when he wrote that letter. See, we got two clear choices that we need to make. And again, folks, if you're listening to me, come on now, call in and support this ministry. Support what they're doing. Because if you don't support what they're doing, you're telling Jack Dorsey at Twitter, it's okay. Go out there and suspend the accounts. You're telling the Motion Picture Association of America, it's okay. Give them an R rating. You're telling MSNBC, CNN, PBS, ABC, and all of these folks, it's okay. Silence our voices. You're telling the progressive socialist left that you're too much of a coward to stand up and fight against them. And say, that's not happening for me. And I'm telling you that I'm going to get, about 3 months worth of these Bible sticks, and I'm going to make sure they get sent over to those men and women in combat. But you got to just ask yourself, how many of you have ever read Travis's letter?
Mm-hmm.
It's a call to action. Yep. It's victory or death. There is no surrender. There is no retreat.
Right.
And we call ourselves Christians. And it says in Joshua 1:5-9, be strong and of good courage. It says in Isaiah 54:17 that no weapon that formed against you will prosper, and no tongue which rises against you in judgment, you will condemn it. So what are we afraid of? That these people can believe that they can act with such impunity to just think they can slap us around and tell us what they're going to allow us to see or listen. You know what? I guarantee you, most of y'all out there are going to go see John Wick 3. But how many of y'all saw Unplanned this weekend? Yeah, I'm putting a finger in your chest. Okay, I really am. If you were here, it'll hurt. But let's what they say here in Texas, cowboy up.
Cowboy up.
Cowboy up. These phones should be melting right now.
Yep.
When you know what just happened this past weekend, when the left basically told Christians, we're going to shut you down.
So many people ask us, what can I do? I don't know what to do, but I got to do something. They can do something right now.
Absolutely.
1-800-347-5151. Let's surprise everybody in the phone room right now, and every single line get occupied. You can do that. Do your part. Join the team. Truth Team with a capital T. 800-347-5151. We're really asking them to put it on the line.
Put it on the line. And then the other thing I want you to do after you call in here, if you got a Twitter account, I want you to tweet something to @JackDorsey. Say, hey, Jack, you ain't going to shut me up. Okay? Mm-hmm. That's what we have to do. We got to let them know that we're here. We're not, no surrender, no retreat.
Again, 1-800-347-5151. Colonel Allen West has put the challenge on the table.
Victory or death, baby.
Victory or death.
That's right.
And if you don't call in, he's going to ask you to get down and give him some push-ups.
I got skills.
He's got skills.
Would 5 of you at $100 a month be willing to step up, make those military Bible sticks happen in the lives of families? But more important than that, stand for biblical truth. Because if we're not going to do it, there's very few other choices. We must not lose our freedoms. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151.
What did Gene Kranz say? Failure's not an option.
That's right.
There you go.
And we don't want failure. We want success. And again, we talked about the Century Club. That's $100 a month. But some people say, well, that maybe is too much. But $1 a day, $30 a month.
That's right.
Colonel West, that's not much, $30 a day. And we have a match on the table. So it's $30 a month,
right,
which is double to $60. So again, we need to hear from you right now. And this is a good time to call. You won't miss anything that Colonel West is saying.
Right.
800-347-5151. 1-800-347-5151.
Last week, the Senate held a vote on the Green New Deal. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York,
I'm the boss.
that young darling of leftists and dancing communists everywhere, believes a special class of people in Washington, D.C. can run our lives and everything else better than we can.
I'm the boss.
It's a clear and present danger to our prosperity and our very survival. Such ideas have failed everywhere they've been tried throughout history. But there's always someone who thinks the problem is not the bad ideas, but the fact that they weren't running the show.
I'm the boss.
On top of that, whenever these ideas grow, there's no room for God or God's people. America's ignorance of socialism needs to be confronted. That's why America needs you on the Truth Team. When you join now, you protect our nation's future, and you get double the impact thanks to a generous matching gift. Joining is fast and easy online at pointofview.net or by phone 800-347-5151. Pointofview.net and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Final half hour in studio with us today, Brad Fisk, as well as, of course, Col Allen West. I might just mention his book again, Hold Texas, Hold the Nation, Victory or Death. I want to pull out a few more things from that, but just before we do so, don't want people to forget that we're in the midst of Truth Team Week, and we have had a number of people call in. So, Brad, you have a few thank yous there.
Right, we still got some in the call center, but a couple came out here. South Carolina, thank you, Randy, for your gift, and a new Truth Team member at $1 a day. Checking in from Brooklyn, I think that is Texas, and thank you so much for there's more. There's plenty more, but I want to go back I want to hear him.
Me too.
I want to hear the Colonel talk.
Sure,
we got to get him going here.
And he's got some sections here on just the decline of liberalism and everything. Let me do one that I know is going to get everybody riled up, and that's reparations. I need an African American to address this issue with a perspective that if I did it, well, you're just a white guy. But what about this issue of reparations that is now surfaced in ways that I never would have anticipated?
Yeah, I mean, every single major Democrat presidential candidate is talking about this issue about, yes, there should be reparations. And to me, having been born and raised down in the South in Georgia, I find it condescending. I find it offensive that anyone would believe that I need to be given money for something that I never experienced. My dad, my mom, they would never ask for that. My grandparents would never have wanted anything like this. But what is so interesting, for those of us that don't understand and know our history, this is coming from the party that created slavery. Okay, this is coming from the party that created black codes and Jim Crow, that created the Ku Klux Klan. This is the party that created poll tests and literacy taxes and all of these things. So I would say that if anyone's going to be paying out reparations, let the party that had all of these policies pay out the reparations and not everybody else. When you look at the decimation of the black family, that was because of a Democrat president, Lyndon Baines Johnson, his Great Society programs. Because when I was born, the black family was between two-parent black family, traditional black family, 75, 77%. I mean, I've done the studies and the research. Today it's 24% because of what he said. Give a check to a woman that has a child out of wedlock, no matter how many children she has in wedlock, give her a check from the government, except for one caveat. Can't have a man in the home. So you destroyed the responsibility of black fatherhood. And then you look at, we talked about Unplanned with Planned Parenthood and everything like that, heavily supported by the Democrat Party. As a matter of fact, the Margaret Sanger Award was given to the last Democrat presidential nominee, Hillary Clinton. Margaret Sanger was a white supremacist, a racist, spoke at Ku Klux Klan rallies that referred to people that looked like me as undesirables and weeds. But yet, this Margaret Sanger is supported by that same party, and now they're talking about how they want to give out reparations. Jason Riley of the Wall Street Journal had an incredible book that he wrote. He said, please stop helping us.
Yes, it was a good book.
It's a great book.
Yeah,
and that's what I would say, and again, these are the type of truths that you don't get on ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, PBS, MSNBC, but you get it here. And that's why what you all do each and every day is so important, to get these truths, biblical truths, constitutional truths, policy truths out to the Christian community.
Yeah. One of the things that we talked about with Gary Bauer is you might have seen that the former Attorney General Eric Holder the other day, when he was asked about Make America Great Again, said, when was America ever great? So then our Vice President Mike Pence put up a couple of pictures, and one of those was Washington crossing the Delaware. Another one was the idea of Americans raising the American flag over Iwo Jima, Buzz Aldrin in the moon with the American flag, and then, of course, Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. giving his famous speech. And then I saw a Twitter post afterwards that said, yeah, but when Washington crossed the Delaware, there was slavery. When the flag was raised in Iwo Jima, Japanese Americans were in internment camps.
Democrats.
When King marched on Washington, black people could not vote.
Democrats.
And then when we landed on the moon, millions were dying in Vietnam.
Democrat.
Okay. So you notice that.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, these are all the policies from the Democrat Party. And let's be very honest. The civil rights legislation passed not because of people like Robert Ku Klux Klan Byrd from West Virginia and Al Gore Sr. They passed because of Senate Republicans led by Everett Dirksen. So I'd be happy to have this historical recount. But I would also say to, Eric, what about the Tuskegee Airmen?
Yeah.
Where else could that have happened?
Yes.
Except for here in America.
That's right.
Or what about, the triple nickel, the first black airborne paratroopers, the Montford Point Marines, the 54th Massachusetts, the first black man that got to wear the uniform, the United States of America, 9th and 10th Cavalry. I can go, all down the line. You don't find any place else like America that a kid born in the inner city of Atlanta, Georgia, in the same neighborhood that gave us Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., can grow up and 50 years later be the member of Congress in Fort Lauderdale Beach and also Palm Beach Island, where 50 years back when I was born, blacks couldn't go there.
Couldn't go there.
So here, I'm a kid that was born in a blacks-only hospital, Hughes Spalding Hospital in Atlanta. And look at what I've been able to attain and achieve. That only happens in America. That's why America is great. And what I hate about these progressive socialist left is that they want to economically and mentally enslave us all to get us to believe that we can't achieve any greatness unless they allow it to happen. That's why they say they have to give you free health care. They have to give you free education. They have to give you all of these things because you and of yourself, you're not capable of doing it.
Well, again, this is one of the reasons we like to have you on the program, one of the reasons we do Point of View, to really give you a perspective that you probably haven't heard. I suspect many people have not heard that one about reparations and some of the other issues. Add Ben Carson to that list. And, of course, we'll probably learn more about Booker T. Washington from you than anybody else. And so those are just kind of things that sometimes just don't get covered during Black History Month, sometimes don't get covered by individuals on MSNBC, but we try to cover them here on Point of View.
That's right. Well, you can be a part of breaking up the incredible hypocrisy of the left. I think hypocrisy, as you were talking, just kept coming back in my mind again and again and again. And they are masters of hypocrisy, really. And you can counter that. You can help us counter that every single day that we're on the air by joining us financially. 1-800-347-5151. 1-800-347-5151. Could 10 of you in the next few minutes give us a call and get your pledge of support in? How about that $1 a day level? $360 for the entire year. How about a $1,200 gift? That's $100 a month, and release a couple of Bible sticks to our guys serving overseas. 800-347-5151. Lines are open for you right now, and there's never a busy signal day or night at pointofview.net. That's pointofview.net. Click on Join the Team, and you're in.
One of the things you talk about in your book is the threat of political calculus.
Yes.
And you have a list of the major double-digit electoral states. And it really brings us back to this idea of the Electoral College. But whether it's the Electoral College, whether it's the filibuster or a variety of other things, or even the Bill of Rights, these are all attempts to protect the minority from the majority. And I think there are some individuals that maybe aren't listening right now that have never even thought about the fact that we enjoy constitutional protections so that it forces the majority to pay attention to the minority.
You're absolutely right. When you hear people say that America is a democracy, it's not. It's a constitutional republic. We have a democratic process by which we have this representative democracy. And what is interesting, case in point, when you look at the last election, President Trump won 36 to 38 states. Hillary Clinton won the rest. Everyone is talking about, but she got the most votes. Well, that's the brilliance of the Founding Fathers.
Yep.
Because they did not want just X amount of states which had the greatest amount of population to rule the rest of the United States of America, which reminds me a little bit of that, movie The Hunger Games, where you had all the people that were all ritzy and everything up in the Capitol, and everyone else lived out in the districts, and they just worked for the people in the Capitol. That's not what America is all about. So what they look at Texas, because, as Mr. O'Rourke said, Texas is in play. They just want the 38 electoral votes. That's all they're wanting Texas for. They don't care about the economic growth and opportunity and prosperity that you see here. When you have a person like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez fly into Austin and start talking about how, we need to get rid of airplanes. We should not have fossil fuels. What happens to the economy of Texas if you don't have oil and natural gas? This is how absolutely absurd these individuals are. And that's why, again, folks, we need point of view, because they bring all of this together from a biblical perspective.
Well, we're going to a break. So if some of you, I know, just hold back because you just love the conversation, but now is the time to act. We have a website that you can go to. It's just click on the button there. It says Socialism, Clear and Present Danger. It's got a picture of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to illustrate that point. And more importantly, we have a lot of people just waiting for phone calls right now. And so let's encourage you to give us a call right now as we go to a break. 1-800-347-5151. For as little as $1 a day, $30 a month, you can join the Truth Team, but also you can join at the higher levels. We've talked about some of you could join at $50 a month, $100 a month, but please give us a call right now, 800-347-5151.
For Truth, 800-347-5151 right now.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
My name is Kwasi Agbota. I heard this for the first time driving through Alabama 5 minutes ago as I'm returning to Detroit. I was very touched. It stands out as timeless in its approach. I greatly appreciated that. I was moved by it, and so I called to give my testimony. And I was very curious about a lot of the same issues. And timeless truth and contemporary application. So I thank God for what you all are doing, and I want to encourage you all that you are reaching perhaps a much broader audience than you might believe. God bless you.
Point of View. Truth Team 360.
Back for just a few more minutes, and that's why we need to hear from you. 1-800-347-5151. We've got a few people. I guess we still have at least one line open,
Yes.
and again, they will taper off very, very quickly as soon as we start hearing Col Allen West again. And we need to meet the match.
We
right?
do. We do indeed. There's a
Dollar
match,
for dollar.
a dollar for dollar match,
Yes.
and every dollar counts. What a great time to consider giving that $1,200 for the year at $100 a month, because that gets doubled. That's pretty exciting. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. It's Truth Team 360. It's a special week of us coming to you, asking you to join us financially. 800-347-5151.
Lieutenant Colonel Allen West with us for a few more minutes, and I thought we'd come back to one of the reasons, not the only one, but one of the reasons why there is such a proliferation of government programs, and that is the breakdown of the family.
Yes.
If you got a father and a mother in the home, they're the best health and human services program you could ever have. But we have had, as you mentioned just a minute ago, more and more cohabitation, more and more unwed births. And as a result, that's one of the reasons why we have so many government programs. And bringing the family back to biblical principles is an answer, isn't it?
It is absolutely an answer, and it's an answer that the left does not want to hear. Just last week, you had a young black female Christian who was disinvited from Cornell University because of her biblical perspectives on sexuality and also on marriage. They compared what she believes in to being pro-slavery and also pro-Holocaust. This is that abject denial, and this is that censorship, that fascism, again, that the other side has, because the statistics and what you see every single day points towards it. I mean, we don't have to walk that far out of your office building here for Point of View to see it in the surrounding community. Because when you break down the family, then you break down that sense of responsibility and accountability. You break down the ability for kids to find that love at home, and also that discipline as well at home. You know, my parents made the decision about where I was going to be educated, not the government. And that's why I think school choice is an important thing. I did not go to the C.W. Hill and John Hope public schools. They found the oldest black Catholic parish in the United States of America is located around the corner from Martin Luther King Jr.'s house. And it's called Our Lady of Lourdes Catholic School. But guess what? That elementary school that I went to is gone today.
Yes.
It's just a community center. And so how many kids will not get that equality of opportunity to receive a good education? And when you break down the family, then not saying that a single parent can't do it, but it is just a monumental task to be able to do it. And look at the lack of disciplining kids. Look at the lack of criminality that is picked up. You know, when people talk about this living wage and all of a sudden you got adults working at McDonald's, you know, frying French fries instead of the, you know, the young teenagers to just get, again, that sense of accountability, then they're going out and what are they doing? They're joining gangs. They're getting in other types of trouble that my dad and mom would not have allowed me to get into. So again, this is so important that that biblical perspective on family relates to the policies that we see emanating out of Washington, D.C., and especially with the progressive socialist left.
You know, one of the other books that I might recommend is Guardian of the Republic.
Oh, thank you.
You know, you got Guardian of the Galaxies, but he's Guardian of the Republic. And I learned a lot about his family, you know, and your dad and your mom and some of that in that as well. But this is no surprise to people that pay attention. I mean, to give credit where credit is due, the former senator, but before that, an individual that had worked in the Johnson administration, Daniel Patrick Moynihan, warned that this is what's going to happen to the African-American family. And frankly, what's happened to the African-American family is now happening to the Anglo family too, isn't it?
Sure, absolutely. It is, and it can happen to the Hispanic family as well, because that's what the government wants. They want more people dependent upon it, and they will create those conditions where you have to be as well. But Daniel Patrick Moynihan, a very liberal senator from New York, he saw these policies of the Great Society. He said, you don't want to do this. You're going to destroy that which is, enabled the black community to survive in some of the darkest moments, and that's the family.
Yes.
And he wrote about it in a book called The Negro Family.
That's right.
And it was incredible that you saw the left attack him.
Yes.
For telling the truth.
I would like to talk to a very specific part of our audience right now. Moms and dads, grandpas and grandmas. Because I'll tell you why. What we're talking about right here, right now, is so important for the future of countless millions of children who could choose the path of disobedience and lawlessness, or could turn and choose to serve others and to give of themselves toward others. And there's so many forks in that road. We all know that. We're all fathers and grandfathers in here. And I'll tell you right now, this is a great opportunity. Grandma and grandpa, mom and dad, give us a call, won't you? Put your money where it needs to be for the next generation that's coming up. We are really paying it forward. This isn't going to affect us a lot, what happens the rest of our life. But you know what? My grandchildren, the oldest is only 16, and I got 22 below her of grandkids. And I'll tell you right now, what is the future going to be? 22 grandkids. But you know what? What's their future going to be? I look into those little eyes of my granddaughter, and I wonder, what is her future going to be? Right. Ladies and gentlemen, you can be a part of the Truth Team right now. If you're a grandma and a grandpa and you care about your grandchildren, would you give us a call? 1-800-347-5151, or maybe write this down and give tonight after you talk to your spouse. Pointofview.net. That's pointofview.net. Click on Join the Team.
Speaking of writing it down, some people want to get the idea of the tweet. You had suggested a tweet that you might suggest, so that's one more action item before we talk about some other action items.
I think that, folks, we need to send a little Twitter post to @JackDorsey. He's the head of Twitter. And just basically ask him, as I did. I took a note to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America. That includes freedom of speech and freedom of expression. Ask Jack Dorsey, what did he take an oath to?
Yes. Jack Dorsey, why did you decide that Unplanned can't even have a Twitter account? And
Absolutely.
That's a good action item.
Yeah.
But the most important action item, because we've got about a minute and a half before we're out of the program today. And again, we have a match. So if you have been waiting till now, don't wait any longer.
Nope.
800-347-5151. We've suggested a gift of $1 a day, $30 a month, but you can come up with something else. If you want a one-time gift, that would be great. But some of you maybe can join at the Liberty Club level, which is $50 a month, where it allows you to receive many of these booklets that we send out every month, along with the Bible stick. But I hope we can get a few of those people. Didn't we ask for at least 5 that would join with us on the Century Club?
And I'm going to change that to 5 sets of grandmas and grandpas. Okay, come on, you guys.
Yep.
$100 a month. What are your kids worth? What are your grandkids worth?
What is
How
the
can you put
future of
anybody-
America worth?
There you go. Thank you, brother. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151.
Any last comments from Col Allen West?
Hold Texas, hold the nation.
That's right.
There's a fight for liberty right here in the Lone Star State.
And we certainly need you to stand up for religious liberty and freedom. And we are coming to the end. So, Brad, tomorrow we're going to have a chance to hear from a number of other individuals. I know Robert Knight will be with us and Chuck Bentley. And
Awesome.
Robert Knight's written about socialism. We'll keep that going as well. But again, we're out of time, so we need to hear from you. Even though we're going off the air, we'll still take those phone calls.
Yes.
800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. We'll see you back here tomorrow on our Truth Team right here on Point of View.
Last week, the Senate held a vote on the Green New Deal. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York,
I'm the boss.
that young darling of leftists and dancing communists everywhere, believes a special class of people in Washington, D.C. can run our lives and everything else better than we can.
I'm the boss.
It's a clear and present danger to our prosperity and our very survival. Such ideas have failed everywhere they've been tried throughout history. But there's always someone who thinks the problem is not the bad ideas, but the fact that they weren't running the show.
I'm the boss.
On top of that, whenever these ideas grow, there's no room for God or God's people. America's ignorance of socialism needs to be confronted. That's why America needs you on the Truth Team. When you join now, you protect our nation's future, and you get double the impact thanks to a generous matching gift. Joining is fast and easy online at pointofview.net or by phone 800-347-5151. Pointofview.net and 800-347-5151. Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries.